Who are your 2 a.m. men? Who are the 2 or 3 men that you could call at 2 a.m. when shit's hitting the fan and they would pick up the phone for you and there would be no judgment?
20% of men say that they have no one in their life that they can be fully themselves with.
Some of the most amazing lifelong friends and connections come from just doing really cool shit together because you went through something hard together. Now we can open up to each other.
When we don't do that stuff together, we end up just sitting in a room and being like, okay, let's talk about the hard stuff. When that's the only hard thing on the table, it has to occur as hard. It's almost like when we do the physical hard labor, now I'm tired, so I'm just gonna talk about it, versus when I'm like amped and like, okay, well now I gotta like work through all my parts and all this type of stuff to get to the thing that's really hard. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast. I am your host, Scott Stone, and I'm here with a very special guest today, a father, entrepreneur, and endurance athlete, and a previous coaching client of mine, Brock Cannon. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to see you in this form again. You know, we spent so many times sitting here in these virtual spaces together, and it just it always really struck me the profound opportunity for two men to connect on what does it really mean to be human and the struggles that we have. And so I just acknowledge your willingness to be vulnerable and to sit in that fire with another man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's needed.
It's so needed. It
Yeah.
really is. You know, I want to go back to, and I have such a vivid memory for whatever reason of meeting you at the Wim Hof certification. Brock and I are both, breathwork facilitators, and we met in California in 2020 at the Wim Hof teacher training. And I remember, after one of the sessions, we came outside and you were just like sitting and, on your phone or whatever. And I just remember seeing you and just, you're like one of the prettiest men I've ever seen. And so I'm like, damn, this guy's like so good looking and so fit. And he's probably sponsored by the bar he's eating. And, I don't know if at the time you were still an ultra athlete, but for those who don't understand what it is, can you tell our audience what ultra marathons are and, what that entailed in your life?
Yeah, no, and I'm laughing because I'm definitely pounds heavier now than I was then. But an ultra marathon is considered anything over a traditional marathon, so 26.2 miles or greater. Kind of the entry level ultra distance is like a 50K, which is just a little bit over 30 miles. So, I mean, first off, I mean, it's amazing for anyone to run even a half marathon. Ultras have become pretty increasingly popular. I mean, you can do 50Ks, 100Ks, 100 milers, and now they're even pushing the envelope more. There's pretty regular 200 and 500-mile races, which is like mind-boggling to me. Like, no, thank you. It's a little too long for me. But yeah, after I think at the time I had been racing mountain bikes at kind of an elite level for 15 plus years and just kind of decided to try something different. So I had like maybe a 5-year stint of running ultra marathons and got really skinny and now have since returned to my roots of mountain biking. So here we are.
Could you tell me a little bit about how you got into mountain biking? Like, what was that like for you?
Sounds pretty cliche, but I remember it like yesterday. I was 15. I grew up in Salt Lake City, and my mom was really active. She would go running up in the local canyons outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, where I grew up. And I had just an old basic mountain bike, and I don't even think I wore a helmet, but I just dragged it up to the trail and started riding it while she was on her runs, and did my first race at 16 and like never looked back. Raced I guess what you'd consider the professional or elite level for a lot of years, and it was just so much fun, especially as a teenager. It just was like a blast getting into it. I was in the 90s, so that was a long time ago.
What was it like being a professional athlete in your teens?
I think I looked back on that time with like a little bit of grace for myself because I think I took it so seriously, which is partially what you need to do well and to compete. But, it was a balance between the discipline of training a lot, but also trying to enjoy it as well. And I think for the most part, I did enjoy it. And, there's kids now who are so incredibly fast and talented. And I think it's my nephew actually, who lives in the Bay Area, is super into racing now, my brother's kid. And it's just really fun to see the enthusiasm and joy that he has, but also like sometimes he's really hard on himself. So I think you kind of have to have that balance of just enjoy it, you know.
Mm.
You have to.
Yeah, I think that that's the goal that, so many of us have in our hobbies that become our professions is remember to enjoy it, because I think it's so easy to pedestalize it or to monetize it and then let that be the barometer of success versus did I have fun.
Yeah.
And it's great that you can look back on that and still remember the time where you were able to say like I still want to have fun doing it. Yeah, what would you say were some of the things that you struggled with in being that professional athlete, or even maybe a better way to put this is like what were some of the things you learned or habitualized that you later as an adult, as a man, had to kind of unpack?
Yeah, I mean, just the seriousness of it and realizing in a way when you're racing at that level, you're kind of in this weird little bubble. You think that everyone understands what you do, but in a way, you only kind of are understanding what you're trying to do, and other elite racers are kind of thinking the same way. Definitely learned discipline, but also had to kind of unwind some of that later on. I mean, quite honestly, for decades, even today, sometimes it's a struggle as I am casually racing here and there, to not take it overly serious and just realize, hey, unless I'm getting paid a lot of money every year, this has got to be fun. There's no point to be acting like this is life. And for a long time, I did. And I think a lot of athletes can probably relate to this at some degree, whether they played, ball in high school or a sport in college, or maybe did dabble professionally. It's like it becomes your identity. And if you tell that story that that's who I am, oh, I'm a cyclist, I'm a professional cyclist, or a professional hockey player, or whatever you tied your identity to for so long, when that ends, and it will, you have to really be prepared to rediscover that identity again, I think. So that was probably
Mm,
the biggest challenge for me.
yeah. Yeah, what's that journey been like rediscovering Brock?
Just realizing you're so much more than what you do. I mean, you know this very well. When you're in a peak state of doing some breath work or in a meditation, you kind of just let all that go and realize, okay, I just am. I'm human, and really everything that I think I am and tell the world that I am on the outside is not who I am. And it's really valuable when you can get to that place, but it's also, I think, so incredibly difficult because we just forget so quickly.
Mm,
Oh, I'm my social media identity. I'm this. I'm the even entrepreneurs. They adopt that identity as that's who I am, and everything gets challenged at some point. And when we can just come back to realizing we're a lot more than that, even in all our imperfections, that's the place I think to finally land.
mm. Yeah, no, that's definitely the cosmic game of hide and seek of like, oh, I think I'm this. No, I'm not. Like, okay, maybe I'm this. And it's like, just still not. And I'd love if you could share, one of the things you mentioned, and I know it's early on in its inception phase, but the work that you're doing with other men now and holding space for them to find their version of that, of realizing they're more than the labels that have been placed on them or that they take on. Yeah, how has that journey been for you to steward other men on that journey and then also be a man on that journey?
Yeah, great question. I guess to give a little backdrop with this, I have definitely attended men's groups in the past, and even had a short stint where I was facilitating my own during COVID, and found a lot of value in all of that, and still do, and still occasionally will drop into a men's group here and there. I went to one just recently here in Bend, Oregon, when after relocating here just a few months ago. And while I think there is so much value in those circles, I think it can also be very challenging for the majority of men, as we're kind of socially conditioned or what have you, or maybe it's innate that it's just a little more challenging for us as men to, number one, get out and socialize beyond work and family, but then to open up, like it's pretty tough for a lot of men. So I was kind of thinking back just through all the meaningful connections in my entire life, and even my time with you, and some of the experiences that we went through, like in our Wim Hof training. And it's like so mind blowing to me, because when you unpack it all, you realize some of the most amazing lifelong friends and connections come from just doing really cool shit together,
Yes.
doing like really epic, hard experiences. I mean, after you and I sat in these freezing rivers in the Rocky Mountains and like that reservoir up near Rocky Mountain National Park where it's like snowing sideways, blizzard, like absolutely frigid waters. It's like there's a connection there,
Hmm.
and you have a bond because you went through something hard together where it's like that hard experience happens first, and then oh my god, now we can open up to each other. Now
Hmm.
we cut through all the other stuff like, hey man, what do you do? You know, the classic question of like men sizing each other up oftentimes in some gimmicky networking event or whatever it is. You just kind of break past all that. So I started just thinking, what if we kind of reshaped a little bit of the playground for what men's work looks like? Maybe it's more about going out and just doing these cool experiences together and then letting those connections happen authentically, very naturally in an unforced way. And so it's pretty new, but you know, taking some of my experiences from taking co-ed groups out on retreats, realize that that holds true. And we've been going out every week here in Bend, Oregon, and just whether it's a couple of guys or a bigger group, just doing really cool stuff. You know,
Mm.
jumping in cold rivers, hiking, mountain biking, and it's really cool because pretty rarely does that question of oh, what do you do comes up. It's like nobody cares where you live, what part of town. Nobody cares if you're like a multimillionaire. It just when we're out on the trail, we're just guys connecting and doing something hard and sweating together. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's been pretty cool.
I love that. And I love what you said there about doing fun and hard stuff together. You know, like as you shared that, the picture I got in my mind is like when we don't do that stuff together, we end up just sitting in a room and being like, okay, let's talk about the hard stuff. Which really, you know, and I don't mean to trivialize anybody's life, like the stuff that's happening in our families or whatnot, like it can be very challenging. But when that's the only hard thing on the table, it has to occur as hard, you know? So it's so hard that I can't listen to my partner. It's so hard that my business is struggling or whatever. And then when we go do these other things like sit in cold water or we hike or we fatigue our bodies, it's like, no, that's actually hard. What I'm dealing with is just what I'm dealing with. And the distinction of that to allow the natural outflow of circumstance in our conversation to being like, yeah, you know, I'm going through it in this thing and it's challenging right now and I'm working through it. And it's almost like when we do the physical hard labor, our ego is like, okay, well, now I'm tired, so I'm just going to talk about it versus when I'm like amped and like, okay, well, now I got to like work through all my parts and all this type of stuff to get to the thing that's really hard. You know, it's like, it's really not that big of a deal, guy. You know, like it doesn't mean it doesn't suck and all that stuff. But I really like what you said about retooling the playground of this work for guys because I think we've maybe gotten it backwards or we've just maybe missed a vital component is a better way to say it. And so I love that you're including that physicality in that process. It's really great.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've always loved witnessing, whether it was through your social media when you had it or Shannon's, is the level of outdoorsing that your life entails. You know, like the travels have just been so cool to witness, whether it's Florida or Tucson or Oregon or like what is nature really provided for you?
Yeah, great question. As you were mentioning that, I was just thinking back to a recent experience with our daughter Emerald. So she's 4.5, and you know, the day and age we live in, and I'm sure any parent listening would agree, it's like there's always this battle with screen time. You know, technology is part of our lives. It's completely different than when we were growing up, and it's a battle. And going into that stage of life, I started witnessing that there was a correlation. Like the more screen time Emerald would have, like the more cranky and whiny she would become. And then we'd be out on a family hike, and I would just stop my wife Shannon and I'd be like, "Do you know how happy she is right now? Like, do you see the contrast here? Like, she is her best self right now, throwing rocks in the river and looking at leaves and stuff." And Shannon said something really brilliant. She stopped me and said, "Well, isn't it clear that we're all our best when we're out in nature?" I was like, "Yeah, like spot on. It's so true. We're walking, we're breathing, we're getting negative ions, sunshine, fresh air, and we're just dropping into like the return of who we are, and that's the facade that we as humans have always faced. We think we're separate from the earth, and the Native Americans and Aboriginal peoples always had it right. No, we're part of the earth, and So yeah, we definitely try to prioritize that, just getting out of nature every day, even if it's just a walk and it's returning to us, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And it reminded me when you were speaking on that of, I don't remember where I heard this, but it's this idea that, like, when we put a screen in front of our face, right, it's maybe 18 inches from our face, right? So the way that our eyes work is it focuses at this like very close point, which just naturally puts us in fight or flight
Mm,
because we're focused at a point that's very close to us. Whereas when we go out into nature and we expand our horizon, the body naturally downregulates into rest and repair. And it's these type of things that we don't really think about because technology is such a part of our lives now. We're like, oh, this is just normal. It's like there's nothing normal about this.
yeah.
This is like a pretty new thing, actually. 20 years ago was like just the advent of the cell phone on a personal scale. I remember being in high school and getting my first cell phone and was just like, oh my God, I'm always connected. And granted, at that time, like the browser speed was trash,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was like, you have 64 megabytes of data this month, and now it's like
Yeah.
unlimited data and 5G and streaming. And it's just like we live in this fabricated reality. So I'd love to hear that that's a non-negotiable is, daily naturing for yourself and your children. What has it been like being a girl dad?
Well, it's all I know.
I
Um,
know.
yeah, it's all I know. Yeah, I've got my two older girls who are basically adults now, 18 and 21. So that's mind blowing that they're adults.
Wow.
Are they always acting like adults? No, but
Same.
yeah, same here. But yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, that's all I know. I can't speak to raising any boys, at least yet. You never know, but yeah, it's phenomenal. They're just so sweet, and I think it helps the man become a little softer and just a little more patient in general by
Mm.
raising girls. Yeah,
Yeah, I could imagine the emotional attunement you get by being in that is significant, and not to say that boys aren't emotional. Boys are definitely emotional and in some cases maybe more emotional. But we as men have been told like, oh, don't cry, don't be a pussy, like all this stuff that like shuts down our emotions, and then we have to do all this extra work of coming back to them. And
yeah,
so for you to be able to be in that ceremony consistently is really cool.
yeah.
I've always said like I think I'd be a really good girl dad, but I'd probably end up with boys. Like, and who knows, right? Like that's it's hard to say. How have you balanced fatherhood with being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge a little bit, but just trying to spend quality time. I mean, that's a reality to call out as well. Like we're living in a world now where it's pretty much the norm that both parents are working, and it's the
Hmm.
same in my house. And I mean, I don't know. I feel old or like I feel like you blink and the world has shifted. Everything is expensive. Whether you live in Hawaii, whether you live in Bend, Oregon, my home state of Utah, it's like everything is expensive. Pretty normal to have both folks work at home and kids are having to go to school or camps. My daughter's at camp today, which
Nice.
is awesome because they just take her out in nature and they have fun. But it's I think it's just prioritizing that time with them each day. Like putting your phone down. Yes, we all have like a million emails, a million messages, things that seem urgent, but what is really urgent is just giving our full attention to our kids. And I mean, that's the biggest challenge in parenthood right now. It's just putting that damn device down and being like, okay, I am completely focused on you. We are going to play dinosaurs and I'm going to just embrace this moment.
It's just this opportunity, right, that children give us to be present and how not practiced it is for so many of us as adults.
Yeah.
Like being present, it's like there is not. I was reading something yesterday or 2 days ago about as a child, we only know two frames of time, the now and the not now. And the not now feels like infinity away, and the now feels like infinity long. And so we don't have this real perception of time, which as we get older, we start to understand that, there exists a conversation as the future and the past, and the future's coming at some idea of a notion of time. But Man, talk about a gift that children give us that is just be here now.
Yeah.
Oof, man. So back to the idea of like managing the entrepreneurial journey throughout our relationship of knowing each other, you've had what I'll call multiple forays in entrepreneurship, both your own personal with your partner. How have you both managed the stress, mitigated the stress from not coming in and managed the stress that is there?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been just kind of supporting each other and knowing who has what strengths. And, if you're in business together, you kind of have to figure that out pretty quickly. Like, okay, maybe I handle this portion, you're better at this portion. And, being humble enough and willing to say, you're definitely better at this and I'm definitely better at this. So I'll take this portion. But yeah, just honoring each other, because I think it's pretty evident with entrepreneurship, like it can just take over your entire life. And that said, I mean, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's great. But yeah, you also have to make time for those kiddos and just prioritize the quality time and say, all right, whether it's an hour or whether it's a full day or whether it's you're actually going to take a full week off, just like really take that time off. I was just having a conversation with one of my good friends who, for the first 10 years of his kids' lives, raised him down in the Baja in Mexico. And he just moved back to Utah, where we're both from. He moved back there last year and he was just telling me some of the contrasts. And he's like, man, he's like, I just got the hall pass from my wife to go to Japan this October with a buddy. And I'm going to take 3 weeks. And I was like, are you worried about like balancing your work and stuff? And he's like, no, dude, when I was in Baja, like I took 2 months off every year. And I think that rings true to people from Europe as well, or Australia or New Zealand. Like holidays are just a standard part of living, and they all look at us like we're a bunch of crazy workaholics. And I think that's just super important, to take that time. I mean, for our household personally, like we don't take a ton of those long chunks of time, but if you can just completely unplug and have quality over quantity, whether that's an extended weekend or just a super cool day trip. That's what it's about. I think just making those memories with your family.
Mm, yeah, I agree. It's definitely one of the hardest things that I have found as an entrepreneur to balance is like actually taking time to relax. Like I know how to pause, but am I relaxing in that pause? Eh,
Mm,
I don't
yeah,
know. I'm kind of just like waiting to turn it back on again.
yeah,
And so that's something I've been practicing a lot lately is just like, what does it actually feel like to relax? There's a good amount of tension in my body. And so I'm like, am I actually relaxing or am I just waiting? And, the willingness to confront the reality of the conversation that exists in my head and not the one that I purport to my partner. It's like, oh no, I'm chill. And she's like, are you? Like women have such a beautiful ability to like really feel into the situation and oftentimes feel us more than we feel ourselves, and that's been decently confronting to like have some things put back in my awareness by my partner and being like, oh, I am actually angry, good point, or like I am actually really stressed right now, or I am actually like really really high strung, or whatever that is, and allowing myself to just be honest has been a really challenging thing. Like I'm pretty good at hiding from myself, and so having a partner who's attuned to me, that's been a real challenge.
yeah. That
Yeah.
superpower of knowing when we're really not there. We might seem like we're there, but we're not, and they call us out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I make the joke that every man wants to date a conscious woman until they call us out on our integrity.
Oh
and
my God, so true.
and I would say, right, we are both blessed with beautiful partners who are very conscious. And I'm curious what that journey's been like for you to be with a woman who is self-aware and who does speak her truth and how you've navigated that with her to allow her to contribute to your own life in a way that is a contribution and not a calling out.
Yeah. Some days it does not feel fun, to have someone that is, I mean, my wife's from Long Island, New York. So like that alone should tell you like she's direct. She she will curse like a sailor. She's just her. And, to call me out and say like whatever's on her mind, that's been very eye-opening to look in the mirror. And if I'm honest, like I resist and I don't enjoy that feedback usually in the moment. But it's been like the epicenter of my growth. Like I think this is the relationship I've grown more than any other past relationship I've ever had. And it's what's needed. And I think the more months and years and weeks we get down the road, you kind of start to finally have the bandwidth to look back and say, yeah, this was all how it needed to be, even if it wasn't fun at sometimes. We think we have control over all the situations and circumstances of life, but sometimes it's going to just redirect us to learn a lesson in a different way. I've definitely had a lot of lessons with Shannon in my time together. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful, like your willingness to get the lesson, right? Like I believe we keep getting the lesson until we learn it. And so I really acknowledge you for your willingness to like actually learn it, and stop repeating it.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the ways in which I see that occurring is your willingness as a man to accept something like support, whether that's coaching or therapy. What does it look like for you to accept support, accept help, admit that you don't have it all figured out?
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of men, I've had times of resistance to that, where I'm just like, no, I'm totally right. I'm justified, whatever you tell yourself. And then when you start to get that support, you realize how refreshing it is. And I mean, I don't know if I'm honest. I mean, I had 2 sessions a month for a year with you, and that was at a really challenging time for me. And it was like for me personally, I would get into these situations where it's like, oh, everything's flowing pretty good, like life's okay, and you're what are you basing that on? You're basing it on, how well your business is doing, how it's going with kids, your health, your energy levels. But then when it's time to talk about the hard shit, like you don't really want to talk about the hard shit. And I would always have a little bit of resistance, but once I would kind of get into that, you're feeling pretty liberated and you're realizing, okay, this is the work, I guess, that everyone talks about, quote unquote, the work. It's like going to those challenging spots. And I am not saying it's any easier today, but I think I realize that it's necessary
Yeah.
the more I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say living a life on purpose isn't easy, it's worth it.
Well said. Yeah.
It's hard to live our dreams out, It takes a lot of courage to put ourselves out there, whether that's to ask the girl out or to start the business or to have the kid. Like it is not easy. I do believe it's worth it,
Yeah.
and I'm curious if you can look back on it. What was happening in your life, just to help contribute to some of the other men listening? What was happening in your life that you were oblivious to at the time, but really spoke to your need for support or to reconcile some deeper things that you were unaware of?
Oh man. I mean, when I started kind of unpacking my life and going through stuff and getting curious as to why certain behavioral patterns and things evolved the way they did, it started to be very eye-opening. And the humbling thing was I had periods of time where I was starting to get a little more understanding around that, but I was still doing stupid behaviors and stupid things. I was raised Mormon, or traditionally called Church of Latter-day Saints, in Utah, as there are obviously are many there. And that's always the first question I get. Where are you from? Utah. Are you Mormon? And I have to explain. So I grew up in that faith for my first 31 years. I was all in. I was stalwart. I went on a church mission, did it all. Got married in the temple. I got married at age 21. My grandmother set me up with a girl that went to her same branch. And, I was just kind of blinders on. The church told me to get married, start a family, and that was it. And that's what I did. And 10 years later, divorce, 2 kids, and finally realizing, okay, if I'm being honest, I'm trying to find my own spiritual path now. And I'm trying to figure out, was this always the right way? And I think one of the things that kind of triggered my exodus from the church was not that I really had a ton of bad things to say about it per se, but I just started traveling at the time for a job, and I was around all different types of people for the first time in my life, and kind of just opened my perspective to different beliefs and the way people saw the world, and started to question how I was raised a bit. And I still have pretty much all my family members are still active in the faith, and we're all good. There's no disrespect or anything like that. I I think there's incredible qualities in that faith still. It just wasn't for me, and I kind of had to find my own path. So I guess all that to say, it was like I did everything I was supposed to do for a long, long time, and then kind of like later in adulthood, started doing really dumb shit. As maybe a way to cope or discover things that I never discovered. And I always say I didn't really have the traditional college years that a lot of people do to kind of get the stupid, party time out and do dumb shit and goof around. But a lot of that unprocessed stuff really came out a bit later in life. And it wasn't fun, but that's how it came out.
Yeah, it's for so many of us, it's there just lurking in the shadow, waiting, right? Waiting for a time to capitalize on. And, for a lot of us men, what I have found, and this goes for most humans, just to be clear, this isn't just men, but most humans really struggle with two big emotions that are shame and anger. We feel angry that the world isn't going the way we want it to, which makes sense, especially when you're raised in a faith and religion that tells you this is exactly how life goes, and if you don't do it, you're damned to hell, and if you do it, like you don't actually get the things you are promised. So it's like, wait, now I'm pretty angry about this, and then so we act out to suppress that anger, and then we've got shame for acting out. And so it's like, okay, wait, I guess I'm damned if I do, but I'm damned if I don't, and just to shine light on, like, for so many of us men, like the coping strategies that we have, whether it's, substances or sex or overwork, like they might work for a time, but they never really actually work.
Yeah.
They just mask a feeling that we're unwilling to feel until we're safe enough and supported by another to like actually go into them. And it's something that is, I don't think well discussed. I don't think enough of us men, or just society, is talking about the struggles of what it means to be a man. I mean, men are 5 times more likely to kill themselves than women are. 12 if you own a gun.
Wow.
And that number went up during COVID.
Yeah.
And this opportunity that I think we have as men who are in the work, we're in the muck, and understand just through relatability that like other men are there and they may not have the tools, and so we start a breathwork circle on the beach, or we start a hiking club, or whatever that looks like, to just be like, hey, do you want to come along on this journey?
Yeah.
And you starting this Men in the Wild thing, like me starting my men's groups and offerings, pretty quickly a lot of dudes are like, I want to be part of something bigger. I'm tired of suffering
Yeah.
and hating myself and all that. And yeah, I really appreciate your willingness to lean into your own discomfort, Brock, and to hold a space for other men. It's so needed, not only for us men, but for our children, for our partners, for our businesses. Like, it's just so necessary these days.
It is 100%. My therapist said something what I thought was pretty insightful the other day, and he said, "Who are your 2 a.m. men?" I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And he said, "Who are the 2 or 3 men that you could call at 2 a.m. when shit's hitting the fan, and they would pick up the phone for you, and there would be no judgment?" And I honestly like hesitated a bit. I had to think back, and I would certainly say I have some, but have to a fault not fostered those relationships the way that I should have over the years. But I think a lot of men would probably ask themselves that question honestly and think like, I don't have anybody. I go to my wife, or maybe I call my parents or whatever. But like, we have this epidemic of not having. We might have friends or like workout buddies as men, but we don't have that deep connection where it's like, I've already like poured out my shameful moments to you, and you know me and I know you, and now we can pick up the phone at 2 a.m. for each other. Not a lot of that.
Well, the good news is I'm 6 hours. Oh shit, I'm only 4 hours behind you now. Well, that's still only 10 p.m. So I got you, bro.
It's a little better. Yeah. It's a little better.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it reminds me of another statistic I saw during COVID, which was 1 in 5 men say they have 0 close friends.
Wow.
1 in 5 men, 20% of men say that they have no one in their life that they can be fully themselves with. That is an epidemic. Like, that is a suicide marker for sure.
Yeah.
And if there's nowhere in my life, and I would not ascribe to that statistic, but for someone to say that there's nowhere in their lives that they can fully set down the woes of being human, like that's a death sentence. and I love that way you put it, or your therapist put it, of just who your 2 a.m. buddies, who can you call when you're in the thick of it and there's nowhere to turn, and the thoughts have went from a swirl to a spiral, and now it's pretty rough, and because what I have found is really, and this is why I do the work that I do, is when we actually speak these things out, and when we share and we give insight into, like, this is what I'm really going through, this is my experience, and we have someone receive us without, oh yeah, well, have you thought about thinking of it this way? Like, yeah, motherfucker, and it didn't work, so shut up with your stupid advice right now, like,
Yeah.
can you just say, I hear you, and that sounds really hard, you
Yeah.
know and I think that's another place that a lot of men struggle, is we're designed to fix things. We put square pegs in square holes, and, well, have you just thought about seeing it this way? And it's like, that is so unhelpful. Like that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just be here with you in it. I'll just be here in this muck, and we can sit covered in mud as long as it takes to just, wade through whatever needs to be waded through. And I think that's something that men are starting to learn. This thing called listening. We're not too skilled or practiced, but I think men are coming around to
Yeah.
really listen to themselves and listen to what they believe to be right. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that, and it's great to hear, after our stint together, that you still have support. You still have a place that you can take these things to and feel witnessed and feel seen, so that, all of Brock is allowed at the table.
Yeah. I was at a men's group, like I said, pretty recent, being new here in this new town, and went on a Monday night. Thought it was going to be an hour and a half. It was almost 2.5 hours. I was exhausted after, but to a point, and this isn't me faulting men's groups, they're all running a little bit differently, but that thing you just said about listening and just holding true space for people without judgment, like, didn't happen in this group. I just felt so bad for this one guy. He didn't have a very overly enthusiastic personality, if you know what I'm saying. He just kind of seemed like a little bit of a drip. I don't know if that's a horrible thing to say, but I don't know how else to say it. He just, like, but he started kind of just sharing, and I guess he'd come to these for a while, and for him it was just about kind of having guys to check in with. And he'd been 2 years sober. He had, a drug history and a couple of kids now. Seemed, from my perspective, to be a little bit of a workaholic, and was expressing to the group how he was just kind of depressed, just like, I'm good at my job, I'm good with my kids, but that's about it. And he just kind of sat there, and sure as shit, this really macho guy who was also brand new that night, probably didn't know any of the etiquette around men's group, starts giving advice to this guy. This guy was a former Army Ranger, just like macho, tough guy in his 50s. Every other word was a curse word, that came out of this tough guy's mouth. And he's just like, well, hey, man, you got any hobbies? Like, maybe you need to get in some hobbies, and maybe that'll fix your depression. I just started trying to fix. As, like, we're so hardwired as men to do that. And it really is a rare gift when another man can just be like, I hear you, dude. Like, that is shitty. And I'll just sit here with you, like you said, in the mud. That's beautiful and so needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tell people, like, I can't solve your problems, but I will climb in that hole with you and hold the flashlight. I'll help you sort through them, but just by shining a light on them with you. I can't do it for you, and honestly, we don't want someone to do it for us.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones that got ourselves in here. Like, yeah, I want your help and insight to, like, see the problem, but, like, I got to sort through these problems, or you got to sort through your problem, like, and I think camaraderie, like that is such an important aspect of this band of brotherhood that we build with others, is like, hey, I'll go to war with you, like, I'll fight the human battle with you, alongside you, not for you. And I think that's, one of the aspects of what we're finding of being human is like, it's challenging. This isn't, we didn't pick, Earth School is not like beginner level stuff. It's pretty wild, especially lately, like more so than ever. It's pretty weird. And this letting go of control, like, we're not in control of this, like, we're not in control of the money thing and the inflation stuff. Like you talked about, pricing is just insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Like, and it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
Like, it may not be the exact same, but, like, like, I always make the joke, like, a pint of blackberries on Maui is $10.
Oh my God.
It's like, but it's probably 7 in
Mm,
Oregon, 6,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
still
It's
really expensive.
it's expensive, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you try to eat healthy and organic. And yeah, we drove out to this farm country here in Oregon. Really beautiful place. They grow a lot of hazelnuts.
Mm.
And we were staying in this beautiful little country Airbnb for a night just to get away. And I was like, wake up, like I'm gonna just go for a little run through the hazelnut orchards. Like, how nice will that be? And I start going out, and I don't have a good sense of smell. My wife will tell you that. She's like, you don't smell shit, and she's got this like superior sense of smell. It's always our joke, but even for me, man, I got out in this hazelnut field, and the wind was blowing from the north, and like I just smelled pesticides everywhere.
Wow.
It's like they had just fucking sprayed with the plane overhead
Hmm.
that night. And they do it at night a lot because, and it's like the crazy thing. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to go on too much of a tangent here, but it's like the crazy thing is you can literally have an organic farm next door and they
Doesn't
might have
matter.
signs out that say, do not spray organic farm. But it kind of doesn't matter these days, man. If they're dropping from overhead and the wind's
Hmm.
blowing, like they're getting some of those pesticides and
Hmm.
it's going in the water, and it's like, are doing the best we can now with these challenges, and
Hmm.
it's everywhere. Yeah,
I I think that you hit on a really key point that sometimes is hard for a lot of people to acknowledge is we're doing the best we can.
yeah,
We're doing the best we can with what we know, especially in this trauma-laden world, like where, we have some coping strategies that may not be the most advantageous, whether it's, you know, pornography or cannabis or gambling or whatever, it's like, but we're doing the best we can, and until we have new coping strategies that are maybe a little more conscious or a little more socially acceptable or whatever you want to call it, like we'll do with what we can because we need to regulate. And
yeah,
one of the things, and you mentioned it before we started about what your therapist said about your shame of like, can you get curious about it, right?
yeah,
Because so often it's like, well, I'm judgmental about it, and it's like, good luck shifting it. But if we can get
yeah,
curious about it, of like, well, yeah, why do I do that? Why is that the thing I reach for? And that's something I realized lately. Like, I've been going through a challenging time to some extent, and not to some extent. That was bypassing. It's been challenging,
yeah,
um, and I was judging the coping strategies I had, and it was all I knew. And granted, it used to be alcohol, weed, and porn, and now it's like breathwork, cold plunge, and sitting still. And those are so much better, but they're still coping. They're
yeah,
still me being like, I don't like this feeling, so if I breathe really hard or if I get in this ice, like I won't feel it.
yeah,
And my body's like, okay, well, we'll keep holding it. We'll talk to you in 6 hours when that dopamine high wears off.
yeah,
We're still
right,
gonna be here,
right,
and we live in a pretty interesting time where it's pretty overwhelming in a lot of senses. You open your phone or you turn on the television, not that most of us are watching TV anymore, but it's always there, and it's just like, oh my God, like, what? And it's just like, yeah, and how do we protect ourselves, whether it's with the food sources we have or the quality of water we drink, like how do we take care of ourselves to the best of our abilities?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple more questions and then we can wrap things up. What would you say to another man who's on this journey, who's interested in, peeling back some of the layers or maybe letting go of some of the habits that they don't feel like serves them anymore these days?
It takes a lot of courage, to say the least. I don't think it ever goes away. It's like being willing to continue to look at that. I don't think we ever get to this place where we're just like, oh, I'm good, man. I'm totally rock solid. There's nothing that's pulling me, out of this. It's like, of course, with the world we're living, we're susceptible to stuff to distract us and want to numb us out and everything else. And it's like, yeah, going back to what you just said about curiosity, that's been very helpful for me, just to get curious about like our behaviors. I'll open up a little bit here, I mean, my history well. A lot of my struggles in life and challenges. I figured out from a very young age with the pressure that I think I felt as the oldest son, the oldest in the family, having to live up to those religious standards, at least feeling that I did, to be the example. I found two things that made me feel enough very young in life. It was my bike racing and my cycling results, how well I did in races, whether I nailed a training ride or not, and then attention from women, and that was like my two things that made me feel enough. Then it would be like looking outside of the sanctity of marriage, at some point and doing something shameful and then not wanting to feel that shame. So what do? You do the same stupid thing again. And it's dangerous, man. And it's taken me now up into my mid 40s to be like, I see it now. I see that cycle. It's like I literally did the same stupid mistake to not feel the shame that I was feeling. Like nobody ever taught me that, when I was younger, that could be a possibility. And I'm really grateful we're having these conversations around shame now. I mean, everyone at this point, for the most part, heard of Brene Brown and her work on shame. And I think that's really helped it become a bit more mainstream. But no, I was going to tell you, actually, this was like never a book I would have picked up, but my therapist recommended this book called Unwanted recently. And it's all about like unwanted sexual behavior. Like, why do we do that? Like whatever it is, and it's for men and women, like whether that's pornography or like buying sex or having affairs or like whatever that shameful, unwanted behavior is, like, why do we do it? And I almost didn't like keep reading the book because it was like very religious. It was like very, very in that context and quoting the Bible and stuff. And like, no disrespect to anyone that's Christian or, biblical based, whatever. It was just like, it felt a little much like the first chapter, but he's like, well, you need to keep reading because like this guy studied 4,000 people and he has like all the data on it. So I was like, okay. So I keep reading and it was fascinating. Like I had never looked at that from the lens of just getting curious. Like, oh, well, why do people do this? It's like usually something happened with their upbringing, like they didn't feel enough or they didn't get the attention from their dad or their mom or whatever. It's not to say like that takes responsibility off, but it's like it can leave clues. It can give us clues into like why we started down that path. And then I think once we have an understanding of why we did that, then we can correct it and we can change course. So pretty interesting to get curious.
Yes, no, I really appreciate you sharing that, Brock, because so many people, they don't understand why, right? They lack the awareness and therefore they can't create the compassion necessary to hold the wound, which the coping strategy belongs to, and when we can rectify and like shed the pain of the hurt that we're carrying in the wound, the coping strategy naturally kind of dissipates, at least alleviates. And, that takes a sense of curiosity because these protective parts come in and they're like, oh, here this dude is again with a pitchfork and a spotlight. No, thanks. I'm out.
Yeah.
But when you come with like, oh, hey, I brought a picnic, and a lantern, like it's not that bright. I brought some snacks. And these parts are like, oh, wow, this dude actually cares about me. And he can understand the amount of work I've had to do to mitigate this awful feeling that I've been suppressing for 25, 40 years. Okay. Well, maybe we could actually feel it. Maybe he is trustworthy. And speaking from my own experience, my willingness to go back to these moments in my childhood that were downright awful and to sit with these parts of me that are burdened by the pain and say, hey, I'll sit here with you and I'll feel this if you're willing to let me. I didn't have to effort quitting cannabis. It just stopped. When I realized that why I was doing it, combined with the cost of continuing, of the anxiety and the overeating and the poor sleep and all that stuff, it was like, it just naturally stopped. Same with pornography, where it was just like, oh yeah, like I'm doing this because I don't like the feeling of whether it's boredom or aimlessness or despair. And I saw something recently that I found very profound in the world of pornography, which was when someone watches pornography, male or female, this is a biologic response, the amygdala turns off. And the amygdala is the fight or flight response. And so you're literally unable to worry, concern, or fear when you're watching porn. So if you got something really overwhelming in your life, porn's a really good way to not feel it.
Yeah.
But it's also a really good way to not deal with it.
Yeah.
And so I loved the first thing out of your mouth in that question response was, it takes a lot of courage. takes a lot of courage to go into that cave and find that dragon and say, "Hey, I'm willing to to brave whatever's in here." A lot of courage, a lot of bravery, and I salute any man that's willing to look at his pain,
Yeah.
whether for himself, for his children, for the sake of making more money. I really don't care what your motivation is. If you're willing to look at it, kudos to you.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. And it's like, I think the more work we do, it's like we realize that we kind of don't, like you said, like we get to the point where we don't need to reach for something. But I think on the journey to that point, what does that mean? Like, what, you can sit on a rock by the
Right.
river without your phone and just be at total peace? Like, absolutely. Like, that's the goal. That's wonderful. But to get there, like, I mean, I'll be very authentic with where I'm at now. It's like I have to have these replacements where I can get there. It's like I replace a healthy, 1 hour mountain bike, not a 6 hour mountain bike ride, like a 1 hour mountain bike ride, where I can just go out and grind and sweat hard and listen to
Hmm.
my electronic music, which is kind of hilarious that I still love electronic music, but I do.
Yeah.
It's like great for biking. Um, but come back and just like, hell yeah, like that was awesome. Like that like balances me out for the day. But like, what else? Like the ice baths, like plunging in the river, doing some breath work, like connecting with a friend, taking those walks, like more healthier choices, but like certainly not to the point yet where I'm just like, I don't need anything external to like help me feel good. Like I'm not there. But
Hmm.
I think it's about being gracious to yourself in that journey. It's like I still take cannabis sometimes. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I just have like my back went out a couple days ago doing something, fucking hurts. Like, okay, a little better than like taking oxy, you know,
Right.
right? For sure. But
And,
like just the awareness
yeah.
of like which way am I moving and
Hmm.
leaving the stuff that like we know is fucking dangerous and wrecks us internally,
Hmm.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the dose makes the drug, right? I do believe plant medicine is medicine and the dose makes the drug. So, if you throw your back out and you want some relief, maybe a gummy is better than 800 milligram ibuprofen, just to put
Yeah.
it on similar playing field.
Yeah.
And if you're wake and baking every day, that's a drug. I don't care who
Yeah.
you are,
Yeah.
and some
Yeah.
people are you and I'm like fine, like okay, you're on chemotherapy. But if you're just trying to mitigate your anxiety, like this was one of the reasons that coffee never did it for me was like certain anxiety was better than uncertain anxiety. So
Mm.
if I drank an espresso in the morning, at least I'd know what to blame my anxiety on, And now I don't drink really any caffeine. Like I maybe have a caffeinated beverage once a month, maybe
Wow.
twice. Like I can't ride the lightning anymore. It's just not my
Yeah.
thing. Not even matcha. Like I'm a decaf vanilla cappuccino kind of guy.
Good for
And
you.
yeah, that's about
That's
it.
that's why they have decaf. It's for
Yeah.
people like you. That's
Right.
great.
And
That
hopefully it's good decaf. Usually it's not, but hopefully it's good.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, to your point, like that is a good replacement and that's allowed, and kudos to you for working through the shame of the occasional whatever, it's we are desiring as sentient beings, we do want to feel good,
yeah,
surely over feeling bad. And so finding suitable replacements that are maybe healthier than the things that we're replacing, I think is a beautiful step. And so I really acknowledge you for exploring that.
yeah. You're a good example.
Mm, thank you. I do what I can, and it's been a long journey, because in college, an Oxycontin or a Vicodin, that was my choice, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of them, and thank God I didn't end up addicted to something like heroin, like I could have easily seen how that would have been possible, and thank God that is not my reality.
Yeah. Seriously.
Two more questions. If you had a message to share with the world, what would it be?
I'm just gonna go with it because this is what just came into my head. Just leave your phone at home and go out for a walk in nature and just
Mm,
let nature do the work.
yeah,
Just get out there and
I
you'll feel
love
better
that.
after.
I love that. And you are such a testament to that. That is not some like post it. Like that is a lived experience for you. And I really see that.
Yeah. Nature's very healing, more than we
Yes.
even give it credit for.
The original healer is nature for sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense why we canceled nature during COVID, but that's a whole nother podcast, Joel.
I was and just share this. Like, it's just every morning, I'm so blessed. We live right by the Deschutes River here, which is like the most beautiful river that runs through Bend, Oregon. And everybody loves the river. You know, it's like the center of town. And I'm so blessed. We live like quarter mile from the river. So I wake up, I do my breath work, I put my shoes on. Usually I try to beat my 4-year-old getting up, and I run down to the river, and I just leave my phone at home and take a towel. And I'm just sitting in the middle of the river yesterday morning, and this giant sandhill crane flies right overhead and just lands like very close to me in the water and just perches on a rock. It's just like, you miss that stuff. You know, if you're like checking your Instagram in that moment, you might be by the river, but if you're checking your Instagram, you're going to miss that. And then if you can just sit there and just observe, look at the bird's going to look at you, or whatever it is, like those are the peak moments that I'm like striving more for these days. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the thing's gonna fly away when we grab our phone to take a video of it.
Exactly.
That's my reminder. It's like
Yeah.
I left my phone at the edge of the river. It's not with me, but I'm gonna try and get out and record it. And it's like,
Right.
buddy,
See you later.
just breathe. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last question. What does it mean to be human?
Ooh, good question. Just to experience it, just to experience and to learn and to not judge and to be gracious to ourselves and others. And it sounds super cliche, but like to, you know, the older you get and the more beat up you get, you realize everyone really is just doing the best they can. I called the wrong number yesterday for somebody work related. And I've unfortunately called this number multiple times, unbeknownst to me, not knowing, forgetting that it was the wrong person. And this lady just screams at the top of her lungs, not exaggerating, like screamed at me through the phone, "Fuck you!" and then hung up. And I just sat there for a minute, and I was just thinking, like, how do you get that angry? And then I like started getting curious about that, and I was thinking, God knows how many people have called her accidentally thinking she's Amy or whoever the person's name was. She's mad, she's frustrated. And then what else is there? Like, what's going on with this lady's life? You know, does she work at like Dollar General and hate her life, or, you know, have an abusive husband, or is an addict? Like, you never know what's going on with people. And there's always something underneath that. So yeah, we're all human.
Mm-hmm. I always laugh at the spiritual community. They're like, I'm a 5D being. I'm like, great. You're actually a human, though. Like, you came here to be human. You didn't come here to be a 5D spiritual being. That's actually why you're on Earth, is to be human. So when you're done calling on your pleading counsel, like, let me know when you want to eat lunch. You know, like,
Yeah.
and it's what we're here to do, is to be human, to experience this, to feel it. You know, so
Yeah.
love that answer. Well, I would say, where can people find you? But you don't have social media, so they're going to find you at the Deschutes River in Bend, Oregon, jumping into the cold plunge and leading other men home. So
I'm there 6:45 every morning.
amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Brock?
No, man, I appreciate it. This has been a very enriching conversation. Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time and your story and your journey as Brock on this path. So thank you for doing your work and helping other men find theirs.
Same to you, brother. Appreciate it.
And to the audience, thank you for your time and attention. And until the next episode, aloha.